Radford, the inbounder. Here comes Taylor. They'll fire from the corner. The three. Hefner, no. Taylor lost it, and it is over. The Houston Cougars survive and advance in a March Madness thriller here in Memphis.
Welcome in, everybody. There you go, the recap from last night. Obviously, this is Cougar Digest Podcast, episode 25. We are live tonight. Everybody's thoughts on their mind, of course, last night. If you went to sleep within an hour of that moment that Kevin just shared with us, raise your hand. I'm going to guess that nobody raises their hand because I know everybody was pretty amped up. The phone was buzzing and crazy, and even though I tried, I was like, man, I got to get some sleep. Yeah, I mean, as tight as that game was last night, what a tremendous win for the Cougars. 195 over A&M in overtime. Big win. We'll dive into that deeper as we go forward with Blake and Gatlin and Kevin. Kevin, I think you got some stats pulled up overall for the game, how it played out in the end. Why don't you give us a rundown on that?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at how the Cougars fared last night. A very rare thing to see 10 players playing in the game last night, but kind of out of our hands, right? One of the craziest games I think I've ever seen as far as how it was officiated, but we'll get into that a little bit later. I'm still kind of feeling some emotion from last night. I know I was kind of just bouncing off the walls watching this game like everybody else. Kept saying like I just gonna have a heart attack watching this game, but happy to see us pull out that win. It was worth sticking it out. What a crazy long game too, might add also. But to have four of our starters fouling out, and then the risk of going into double overtime with the potential more foul trouble. I don't know what we would have done. I don't even know how you would handle that. Burn a red shirt from somebody on the bench or something just to bring him in for 5 minutes. But again, happy that we pulled out that win. Looking forward to the next game this upcoming Friday. Got to point out some of these players who had these big games. Sharp, big game out there. Sharp and Cryer both 50 points. Shed again, having a Shed game, 21 points, 10 boards, 5 assists. All out effort from the bench, from the starters, because we had to. A&M, I don't know if we're going to face a tougher team in the tournament this year. Maybe UConn, because UConn's looking pretty strong right now. I have to admit it, even though I don't want to. Excited to come out of this game with a win. Like to hear everybody's thoughts about this also. Also, the rebounding from A&M, if I could just point that out, just the offensive boards, they were relentless. Yeah. Not sure if we're going to face another team that can do that. But love to hear what Gatlin and Blake had to say from their perspective from the game last night too.
Yeah, a couple narrative thoughts I just kind of jotted down as I was thinking about the game afterwards before we kind of dive into some analysis. One was like the Aggies were the team with players who felt kind of slighted because they were passed over. I think when you think about every time U of H plays like Texas or A&M, it's like, all these kids had a chip on their shoulder because they weren't good enough to go to Texas or A&M, and that's how they ended up at U of H. And I started looking at these offer lists and just thinking back in my mind, and like one that really stood out was Solomon Washington, right? Yeah. I mean, that was a guy who U of H recruited. They, offered him and were kind of stringing him along, and ultimately decided to go with Terrence Arsenault. And Solomon Washington was kind of their backup plan, you could say, and backed off him there towards the end. And that's how he ended up at A&M. Wade, for all, he was a very highly recruited player. He didn't have an offer from U of H. He had offers from Baylor and other top tier programs in the state, but not from Houston. So, these guys, like, man, they look a lot like where Houston was a few years ago as far as how they play. Like, they have that culture and DNA. But it was so interesting to see the shoe be on the other foot from that perspective. And just a real testament to where this program is. So that was a story.
Yeah, I think that was about the epitome of epitome of a culture win. Because I mean, the thing that separates contenders from pretenders in my mind is whenever your first two options are having slow games or they've fouled out, somebody else has to be able to step up. And if you don't have that, you're not going to win a national title. Emmanuel Sharp had 30 points, shot 50% from three. I think that's huge. And this is kind of like, you see teams being able to win tough games. Just about everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And the foul out, like players fouling out, was not only, last time 4 starters fouled out in the NCAA tournament and a team still won was 1987 UTEP in the round of 64. And it wasn't just 4 starters fouling out. It was 4 starters fouling out at the worst possible times, right? LJ Cryer fouls out whenever we need to shoot free throws. He is head and shoulders our best free throw shooter. Just fouls out. And that's why you see the offensive rebounding numbers for Texas A&M. We were rolling 4 guards and a power forward at the 5. That's a recipe for bad defense. That's a recipe for bad rebounding. And, still through all of that, survive and advance. That's the recipe in this tournament. You don't have to win pretty. You just have to win. Now, even despite that almost monumental meltdown, we still in the round of still in the Sweet 16, just like everybody else. Still have an opportunity to advance, just like everybody else. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, and it would have buried 90% of programs. UH is in that 10%.
That's fair. I think, and like Blake said, the epitome of the culture win. Talk about Kelvin Sampson just squeezing everything possible out of that sponge last night in terms of, I mean, good grief. Francis goes down, and then LJ Cryer goes down in terms of fouls. And then, you're starting to lose people. Jamal Shedd goes down. You've got Ryan Elvin out there who, of course, everyone roots for to be out there. And what a special moment, of course. When we saw the opening with Kevin, the moment with him putting Houston's name over to the Sweet 16 round. But for him to be out there literally in a meaningful moment and to hit that one free throw, I know he would have loved to hit both, I'm sure, but to hit the one free throw to put it and keep the gap as wide as it was, I mean, what just literally this was the epitome of being. I know they released today that Kelvin Sampson made the list for Coach of the Year. This was the epitome of why Coach Kelvin Sampson, I believe, probably is the Coach of the Year. Obviously, in my opinion, just because who else, like Blake mentioned, has lost 4 starters to fouls since 1987 in the opening round, like Blake said. Who could lose those 4 guys in terms of also going to a free throw game down the stretch and still find a way to squeeze it out in overtime, overcome the emotional swing of that 3-pointer at the buzzer to send it to overtime? I mean, if anything, if ever there was an opportunity for Houston to quit throughout the year with everything they've been through with the injuries and this and that and the ups, the downs, that was it. And we talked about it last time we were on here that A&M was potentially the hardest matchup they probably were going to have in this whole tournament in the second round. And sure enough, it was early in the game, and I remember my wife passed through the room, and it was like 7-7 early in the game, obviously. And she was like, "How's it going early?" And I was like, "It's going to be a war. Like literally, it's going to come down to it. Like no doubt in my mind, this is about to be a long war." And sure enough, all the positive, all the negative, and everything, and you ended up even regulation wasn't enough time for it. So, I mean, just what a tremendous game! What a tremendous win for the program, for the culture, for everything that the Sampsons have been working on since they got here. This was it. Now, obviously, they got to turn their attention quickly to a team that like Duke, that's a blue blood. Duke may not be the Duke of Coach K, but it is still Duke. They still have talent on that team, and they still provide some matchup problems for Houston, which we'll get into. But what a tremendous win for those in Memphis. And to get back to Dallas and back into the home state, the only team in the state of Texas, of course, still standing after the opening weekend. Tons of things to brag about, but I mean, just what a tremendous win last night it was, man.
Yeah. And I'll say sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I was listening to the press conference afterward, and I would have asked the question, why wasn't Walker out there sooner? Why wasn't Ramon Walker out there sooner? I wasn't sure if he was, still getting it back into game shape. Maybe he had some soreness. I mean, nobody mentioned anything about it, but the guy could have, taken some of those minutes away from some of those starters who started fouling out. I mean, you put Walker in there in a rotation where he's taking, some minutes from Pryor or Sharp or, Roberts even, playing down in the front court. And we could have relieved some of these guys from getting in foul trouble. But I don't know why he wasn't in there. I mean, I understand why Wilson and Dunn, but Walker is that spark plug off the bench. He's the one in there doing the dirty work that, we need him to do. And I would have liked to have seen him play more minutes in there, especially a little bit earlier with some of that foul trouble. And I just wonder if Sampson moving forward, especially against Duke, if we might see Walker playing more minutes just for that very reason,
My
Shed played the entire game,
My guess would be it's probably related to the knee. I mean, obviously you come back after just a month of a meniscus. I know they said it wasn't classified as a tear, right? As a stretch, and that's why he was able to avoid surgery. But still, I mean, after playing, what did he play? Like 14 minutes in the first round game? Like he's probably dealing with a lot of soreness. And I think they were probably trying to avoid putting any more stress on that if they had any choice, right? Especially knowing you have a week of rest on the backside of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. But with the struggles, I mean, I would have liked to have seen it. I'm not going to second guess Sampson. I mean, Coach Sampson. I'm not here to do that. It was just something that was going through my head at the time. Like, why wasn't he in there earlier? And I wish somebody would have asked at the press conference, but nobody ever did.
Yeah,
it would have been something that I wanted to know.
Now, I did want to, Blake, on your point about the culture win, because this was something I was texting back and forth with my brothers last night, and one of my brothers sent me something right before we got on here that made me think about what Kelvin Sampson did say in his press conference and what Jim Nance said as well about, being built for this, right? Going through those brick walls and just, having those salty defeats over and over again. Like you think back to when this run all started, the bitter loss against Michigan, right? The last second shot. The bitter loss against Kentucky by 4. The comeback win against Rutgers and Illinois. Like over the years, Houston has built up to this point. And that's why I said, like, when I think about A&M as a program, and believe me, I hate to say anything kind about A&M. I hate the color maroon. I hate everything about them with every fiber of my soul. But that program,
tell us how you really feel.
Listen, but that program, man, I mean, they're building something special there, and I have to give them their flowers and acknowledge it. Like this is a program building loss for them. The way it's a culture win for us now, right? Yeah. That can be a bedrock or a cornerstone that they can look back on and learn from. The way that we did that ultimately was the difference, I think, in this game. And you look back at the legacy of the culture, right? What it really means. So
This is also, I kind of made this point throughout the season. Like this is battle testing for March throughout Big 12 play. This is when you see it. I'm not sure that roster playing an AAC slate wins that game. I think it's those back to back. You play Iowa State today, and then in 3 days you play Baylor. Like it's those grind you out type of games. That's what really prepared this team for, again, like I said, a game where literally anything that could have gone wrong pretty much did, and you still come out on top. It's the games like Iowa State at home where we had to grind that one out, Baylor where we had to grind that out in overtime as well. I think that's a pretty similar game. You had a comfortable lead, you lose it, and then you have to go out and win in overtime. Obviously a little bit more adversity here, but you take that away, you replace that Baylor game with us playing Temple, and you replace the Iowa State game with us playing Eastern Carolina. Like it's just not the same level of hardening and mentality building that you get playing a Big 12 slate. And that's why you join the conference. That's why you go through the harder schedule, because now come March, like Samson said, we're built for this, and we've been building that all season. And it starts with Big 12 play. I mean, there was a tweet from Fran Fraschilla saying that Houston didn't get better since the last time we had played A&M. And I responded to it because, I thought it was pretty silly. Big 12 play, you just saw it right there. That the Baylor game alone, you could pencil that in as one of the biggest wins in the Samson era at UH. That win right there prepared us for, the overtime win against A&M. So I don't really know how you make the case that we haven't gotten better, but that's why you play in the Big 12.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't bring this up, and Leo made a comment about it. I need y'all to talk about the refs. We will talk about it. And I'll try to.
Blake already did.
Yeah, I'll try to take a little bit of a more graceful approach here. Don't get me wrong. You can look at my text message conversations last night. There were several explicitives. I was as upset as everybody. But when I really look back at it, watching it back this morning, I think a lot of the discrepancy came in the first half. There were some really bad calls in the second half, like specifically LJ Cryer on the closeout 3, all of the JVR fouling out and kind of just putting his hand on the guy's hip. He's driving in, like those were bad calls, and I think we're all on the same page about that. But the big discrepancy was in the first half. And look, some of that you have to give credit to A&M for. All right, they were getting into the lane and creating contact. They were forcing the issue. Whereas Houston early on, I think 12 of our first 13 shots or something like that were 3-pointers. So you're not going to get the same amount of calls, especially in a game like this, shooting shots on the outside. It wasn't until the start of the second half when Houston was able to get penetration. The first 10 minutes of that second half, it was a pretty even call. I think U of H actually had more fouls called their way for the first 10 minutes or so of the second half. So, I think there's some of that A&M was playing really well defensively. Not saying they weren't fouling, but saying they were making it harder for the ref to call fouls on them and easier for it to call fouls on us. So, I think when we just talk about, hey, the refs were horrible, I think it diminishes what was genuinely a great game, even without the egregious foul calls. And A&M could have won this game, and it wouldn't have been solely due to the refs are horrible. A&M played really, really well enough to win. So I just wanted to try to take a slightly more positive approach there.
I won't, but I won't bash them any more than I have already. Especially that possession call towards the end of the game.
The jump ball.
Nobody even had possession of the ball. Yet they were just so whistle happy. They just couldn't help themselves but to blow the whistle and give the ball back to A&M. Free throws were the story of this game. A big part of this game, especially that last minute 38 in regulation. We had that 13-point lead, and then A&M went on the hack-a-shack, and it worked. And it worked because
they just kept hitting those threes.
1 out of 2. We were 1 out of 2, and they kept hitting those threes. Like I could not believe what I was seeing. We couldn't make what's typically the easiest shot that you get. Nobody contesting you. You got a free shot at the basket, and we couldn't make 50% of those, and they were making the hardest shots that you can attempt. Crazy game. Yeah, I mean, like you, Gatlin, I give respect to A&M. I wonder if this is a trend. We see Iowa State changing their style, updating their style of play. And, I wonder if we might start seeing more teams this physical, going after those loose balls the way that we do. And that's one of the reasons like UConn does scare me a little bit in this tournament, because they do seem like, just about as complete a team as you can get. I haven't looked too much at their stats. And Gatlin, I know that you've been, looking at some stats and some stuff with Duke, and I know we're going to get to that here pretty shortly. But I think I mentioned on the board last night, these refs, they should not officiate another game this tournament. I don't know. Someone tell me this. Do they actually like game plan at all? Like take a look at anything, or do they just roll out on the court and just say, all right, we're just going to call it like we see it? Or do they even take into account the physical play of some of these teams and, either make a decision, okay, we're going to let them play a little bit rather than going out there and start policing it themselves. I just wish sometimes it's a tournament game. Let's let the teams decide this on the court as opposed to the free throw line. But again, that's just my take on it. That's just my perspective.
Yeah, I think in general, the tournament games are always going to have a little bit of a tighter whistle, which never favors Houston, right? But it's just one of those things. I think you're right, Kevin, to some degree. There's probably a level of the refs go into this with some bias, just knowing how physical both of these teams are and saying, hey, we want to make sure this doesn't get out of hand, so we're going to call it tight. Yeah. And then again, right, in a tight whistle game, the team that gets to the lane more often is going to get, more calls. So
right.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, I'm sure that plays into it to some level for sure.
You can't help but think that teams are obviously going to watch this film and see how to attack this team in the paint like that. And, I have faith that Coach Sampson and his staff are going to, do what they need to do, make the adjustments that they need to make in order to account for that. But, that a little too close last night. But again, glad that we pulled that one out.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think if you've got, 2 or 3 guys who are able to just beat you off the dribble, which they had in those, as Sampson called them, the lefties, with Radford and what was the other guy's name? Obaseki. I mean, both of them just had a really quick first step and were getting in the lane. And then again, whenever you rebound offensively like they do, I mean, that's ultimately what killed us is you get into the paint, you get a shot up, and you either get fouled or, right, everyone has collapsed to close out on the guy who's driving, and it leaves, a nice little dump off for the guy to clean up the rebound. It was just kind of a recipe for, disaster. I think that's what we all kind of talked about, because it just didn't feel like a very good matchup strengths-wise, right? So I just felt like it was kind of a perfect storm. I don't know that Duke or really anybody in the tournament has quite the toughness and bodies down low to do that to us again. I mean, maybe Iowa State, right? Obviously,
yeah, outside of Iowa State,
yeah. But anybody else, I don't know. Because again, right, Kevin, you're right. Like to some degree, I think every coach in America would like their team to play as tough as Iowa State and Houston and A&M do. But there's a reason they don't. It's hard. It's hard to get guys to play that hard.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what Kelvin talked about again, is like when he says we're built for this, it's, hey, we're out there at 6 a.m. in the off season on the baseball fields. We're carrying, squat bars up parking garage ramps on every Wednesday in the off season at 6 a.m. Right. Like those are things LJ Cryer mentioned when he came in, everyone warned him, hey, it's a different thing here. You're not going to be ready for it. And it wasn't until he really got into it that he even understood, like, it is different. So,
yeah.
And
I just want to add also, the press conference, talking about Ryan Elvin, Shed giving him high praise, saying the guy comes in, he's the first one in the gym, he's the last one to leave. He works just as hard as everyone else. And Terrence Arsenault, is progressing as well as he is because, he's out there practicing with Ryan. And no doubt, Ryan, if he goes into coaching, I think he's going to have a bright future. Very smart ball player. He knows how to play the game. He knows how to play the game tough. But I just love to see that. And Blake, you mentioned it always with the culture, and that's the culture. Last man on the bench is going to give just as much effort as your starters. And again, that's why we won this game. Is we'll say it again, culture win. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, talk about something out of a movie too. I mean, senior walk-on comes in and ices the game with the free throw. And the moment I love most in the entire game is right after Ryan gets fouled, the entire team comes together and huddles around him. Basically, we don't know what they said, but you could assume they said, "You can do this. You're built for this." And he goes out and does it. I mean, that's just like last night. I said it was real life Rudy, and somebody reminded me that Rudy was in real life. So I won't say that again, but it was Rudy 2.0. This time in an NCAA tournament game, not in garbage time. It was like we needed that point. We don't have that point. There's a chance this game ends differently. I mean, you don't have Ryan Elvin on the bench. I tweeted this out. People say Houston doesn't have depth. They have Ryan Elvin. You don't have him on the bench. There's a chance that A&M is game planning for Duke right now and not.
It came down to it, didn't it, last night? Yep. Literally every single player possibly they could have squeezed in there.
And I just wanted to throw these A&M stats up really quick because I think it's worth seeing, especially the rebounding numbers that they had against us. More than likely, we won't see numbers like this again against us for the tournament. But there has been a trend over the last few games where we've been out rebounded by teams, even though we've been able to pull out wins in those games. But 26 offensive rebounds, 49 total rebounds in this game for A&M, and just goes to show that toughness that they have down there in the paint and going after those balls just like we do. I think free throws were the story of this game because A&M they were just as bad as we were from shooting the free throws.
It was
luckily, rough. It was rough to watch also, and it was somebody had to win this game, right? And it was going to come from the free throw line. But I just wanted to throw some stats up here just to show these numbers too, because that was a tough game, and I think it's just worthy to see just some of the stats that A&M put up against us, just to highlight that.
Even at 21 points, Wade Taylor, I mean, I know obviously everybody thought he was very well kept in check the first half, but
5 out of 16, 5 out of 26,
right. Even to come out in the end and end up with 21, he really heated up early in the second half, and he felt like, oh, great, here comes this guy. The guy that everybody was worried about coming into it. So even at 21 points, it feels like you still held him pretty much in check, and that was part of the win.
Yeah, that was when I saw that, my first thought was, man, that might be the quietest 21 points I've ever seen.
Yes.
Right?
he made the big shots when they needed to. I mean,
absolutely.
Second half, but first half he was real quiet, and they made note of it several times.
And the last thing I wanted to kind of touch on here, I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts, but there was some conversation earlier in the year about Cedric Watts, and what is his role moving forward? This is year 2. He's not impressive. He's barely touching the floor. Is Houston going to move on from him the way that they have with some of those guys like Kyron Powell? And there's been some big guys who didn't pan out. Is he the next one, right? And Kelvin Sampson had some thoughts about him after this game that I thought were important. When we talk about like the culture win, right? Like, how do you consistently build the same culture over and over again? It is with guys like Cedric Lott. And what I mean by that is, could you out-recruit him over this offseason, kick him out, go find a big in the transfer portal who's better? Maybe so. But he talked about this in the postgame, bringing in freshmen and the value of that, letting them come up in the culture and getting 3-4 years in the program. That's how you have guys who know the defensive system, who are leading the pack, defensively, doing the gritty work. And so I think, we just need to remember that, because there will be a lot of conversation once March is done about who's staying, who's going. And there's some of these guys, I know Malik Wilson isn't a homegrown, but I think he kind of embodies that culture. And he's one of those guys who will be on the fringe. Hey, is he coming back? Is he not? And I just think it's important for fans to start to remember and tuck some of this information away in March about these guys who have been in the program have a lot of value come March, because they know the culture, and it's not just about who can score more points, right?
If I remember right, I think Sampson called Lott a sixth semester guy.
Yeah.
If I remember right. So, I mean, give the guy a couple more years and let's see where he's at, in this culture, going as hard as he does in those practices with the other front court players. I'm looking forward to seeing how he progresses in his development, because he could be a monster for us in a couple more years.
Yeah, and not to mention, like, when you look at his physical traits, I mean, the guy has great feet. He moves well for someone so big. He's leaned out over the year. Like, he's got some good, just natural instincts. I think the biggest thing for him is, you're right, Kevin, just like time. Like, he's not always in the right place at the right time just because he's new to basketball. He doesn't understand quite the rotations and, when to hedge the screens hard and how to recover, and some of those things that just these guys have been playing basketball since they're 4. So you're right. I think give him another year or two. I mean, he held his own against Hunter Dickinson in the second game really well.
Yeah,
like,
very well.
Very well. And we'll get into it with the Duke game. Like, I could see said Lott actually playing some significant-ish minutes in this Duke game for that reason, actually.
Well, maybe that's a good segue here, Gatlin, to
hold up, Kevin, before you move on, real quick,
right.
just quick poll here. Did anybody else see after Roberts banged his shin up again early in the second half, and they were over there giving him treatment on the bench, and they pulled his sock down to spray the numbing spray on there? Did you see how bad the bruise was? Did anybody else see it other than me? Because it looked really bad on his shin and on his calf. Like, the whole area was bruised up.
For some reason, I thought it was a tattoo. First.
No, I think that was nastiness of the bruise. I really do. And so I was wondering but it was brief, and it was kind of like in between. Maybe they're going to timeout or whatever, going to go commercial. But I saw it and was like, yeah, man, that looks really painful, actually. Yeah. So anyway, what a great point, the nastiness, to segue over to Duke and what they bring to the table. Obviously, like I said, coming in at the beginning, they've got plenty of talent on that team. They're always going to have talent coming to Duke, at least in the foreseeable future. But I know, Gatlin, you said you've been doing a little bit of digging into what they bring to the table. I think a lot of Houston fans were obviously worried first and foremost about getting to this weekend in Dallas, and then seeing where things pan out after that. So what have you seen early on?
Yeah, so first and foremost, some just random thoughts and stats and things to know. Duke, towards the end of the season, lost Caleb Foster, one of their talented freshmen. Him and Jared McCain were the prizes of that class, and were both playing extremely well. Up to that point, he was shooting roughly 40% from 3 prior to his I think it was like a stress fracture in his foot. I think it might have actually been the same injury that Tugler had, I believe. And so he is done for the year. They lost him right before the second UNC game, and he has been missed sorely. It's taken a lot of their depth away. So they pretty much run a 7-ish man bench, but the vast majority of that is played by their starters. They actually remind me of Kansas to some degree. Not exactly in the way that they run their offense, but in some ways the way it's structured. You have a really talented big man who feels comfortable with the ball in his hand, can stretch the floor, shoot the 3, and they like to run the offense through him, whether that's down low or bringing him out to the 3-point line for some dribble handoffs, some kind of screen and handoffs, pick and roll game, 2-man game on the wing. Everything kind of runs through Kyle. As far as their efficiency numbers and things like that, really well, I think they're like 5th in adjusted offensive efficiency rating, and something like 12th in defensive efficiency. So really solid on both ends of the floor, but they run a slow pace. They're methodical on offense. They're not in a hurry. They don't do a lot in transition. When they do, it's mostly driven by Tyrese Proctor. Him and number 3, Jeremy Roach, are both really solid perimeter defenders who are going to give you some on-ball pressure. Jared McCain, as U of H fans will be familiar with, is probably their weakest defender. It's something teams have been able to take advantage of at times Duke's propensity to switch, especially 1 through 4. They will switch all of those positions, especially early, and make you take advantage of it. So UNC did this a lot. Their first opening set in that game against Duke on senior night, they ran like a double screen and made Jared McCain get tied up in it, and they had their power forward post up. It looked a lot like the opening set we run with Jawan Roberts to start the game a lot, just with a screen there to get the mismatch. So I can see Houston taking advantage of that a lot. As far as matchups kind of go, they don't offensive rebound the ball very well. They average about just shy of 10 offensive rebounds per game. For context, we're averaging 13. So, kind of around the same area that we are. They don't shoot the ball they do shoot the ball decently well. They're about 80 or 48% overall from the field this year, average about 80 points a game. They shoot the ball just a little bit better from 3 than we do, 37% compared to us at 34%. Let's see. Yep. And they're not great in transition on defense. So there's a lot of getting lost, not communicating well. Again, with the way they switch things, I think Houston can generate some turnovers. The guards don't tend to be very confident with the ball in their hand in the middle of the court. So when they run that kind of screen and handoff with Kyle Filipowski, it'll be really interesting to see how Houston, given that little blitz that they do, how Duke will handle that. Duke's guards can light it up outside. They're capable of stringing together multiple shots that will keep them in games. You look at that UNC game, they were down 15, and all of a sudden, they made 3 threes in a row. They're right back in it. They've done that multiple times this year. Jared McCain is lethal, and he's kind of, with Caleb Foster up in their ISO guy. So when they don't get what they want out of a set, or with Kyle Filipowski in the post-up game, they'll give it over to him and let him try to make a move, get to the basket, or generate a shot.
McCain had 30, I think, in the last game also, 10-15 shooting, I believe.
Incredible scorer.
Guy could score.
Yeah.
Guy we were recruiting also,
Yeah, and I think part of the key with Jared McCain is make him work on the defensive end. So get him involved in these switches, even if it's not a switch. He'd be guarding Emmanuel Sharp. I think this is a spot where Damian Dunn could play a big role, right at the 3 instead of having to come in at the small ball 4. Get him some low post-up touches. Kelvin tried to do that a couple times this year. I think this would be a great matchup to do something like that. Make him defend for 20, 30 seconds and wear him out so that he doesn't have his legs, right? See what happens.
What's the spread at right now? Has anybody seen that?
Only 4 or 5, maybe?
Yeah, I believe 4.5 for
4, yeah.
UH.
A couple notes I think to make note of carrying forward out of the last game into the next is Jamal shed, and arguably for sure in the first half, but I felt like he carried over some as long as he held out before he fouled out. I haven't looked at the stats to see if I know it wasn't probably the most points he scored or the biggest impact he's had on the game, but early in that game, whenever there were some struggles, especially in the first half, he took that game over. You know what I mean? He started making shots. He started creating off the dribble. He did some things along the way in there, and I think the broadcast did a good job of pointing it out too, of how he was the defensive player of the year and this and that in the Big 12, and he was kind of the senior and making his mark on the game, and I thought it was noticeable. But at the same time, I also felt like A&M did a good job of flattening the curve, so to speak, in terms of Houston's been a big team of runs. They kept noting that earlier on, like the Big 12 and early in the NCAA tournament. Houston's been a team of runs where they get on a hot run and all of a sudden you look up, they're 15-2 on you or something, and they've opened the gap, right? A&M, and of course you would expect this as you get to better competition along the way, they did a good job of making those runs minimal. Of course, in the end, Houston was able to pull it out, but they never allowed Houston to get too far out in front of them, and Houston was never able to really stretch that gap beyond a certain point, which made it close down the stretch, obviously.
Yeah. I think it was 13 was their largest lead, and that was at that minute 38 point where they started fouling. And speaking of Shed, how about that? That dunk that he had on that
The
rebound.
putback dunk.
Wow, I mean, just insane. And even the announcers were like, "This guy's 6'1", jumping over everybody else." But that
he was up there.
Press game at the post game conference, he was like, Coach Sampson, he doesn't want me going after offensive rebounds, but he's like, I couldn't help myself,
Exactly.
I thought it was interesting that he doesn't want him to do offensive rebounds, but he, Shed can pull down his share of rebounds also. That putback dunk off that rebound was, that was something, that's a poster right there, I think, in the making.
Yeah.
Or at least a screensaver of some kind.
Yeah. I will say the matchup, I don't hate it, especially because the teams that have really given us trouble this year are not these elite offenses. Like the big comparison, every game we lose, everyone compares it to Miami from last year. I don't think that's this team's kryptonite as a elite shooting offense. We've played those. BYU is a better shooting team than Duke, and we beat them in Provo. The thing that scares me are teams built like Iowa State who are predicated on good defense, because our defense will travel. It's death taxes in Houston defense. I mean, it's going to be there almost every single night. Only times it hasn't been there was really A&M and OU when we got in foul trouble and we had injuries. Whenever our starting five is out there, the defense will be there. What's scary is whenever, offense can be shaky at times. If we play a defense that really locks that down, that's when we get in trouble. And that's why this Duke matchup, I mean, obviously it's Duke. This is not a gimme by any means. I think the 4.5 point spread is perfectly fair. It's going to be a tough game, but I'm not really buying into the narrative that a few people have that Duke is just going to steamroll, because that's what they've done the first two rounds. I feel like if I had a choice of matchups, I would, for the rest of the season, give me the best offenses and you can keep the best defenses. I don't want to play them again. And that's why, Iowa State's good thing they're on the other side of the bracket, because that's the recipe. It's really the anti-Houston. The only thing that beats Houston are teams built like Houston.
Right. True.
Because like I said, defense will travel. Offense can get shaky at times. Obviously, it has to be on this week, but defense travels again. Duke's going to have a really hard time getting going and getting in a rhythm, and offense will eventually come along. So I don't hate the matchup. I'm just glad Iowa State is on the other side of the bracket. There's really no elite defenses left in the South region.
Well, I think our experience kind of accounts for something, Duke, we know that Duke reloads every single year, those 5-star players. Look at their class this year. They got six commitments. 5 of them are 5 stars. One's a 4-star. I think the highest rated player is 50th in the nation, as far as their incoming class. So they have the talent, but I'll take our experience and our culture over 5-star 18-year-olds coming into a program. So I do like our chances in this game for that very reason. I have a feeling that we'll have a pretty packed house there, being so close to Houston also. But yeah, the way I see this game right now is I like the spread, and I just wonder if which way it's going to move as we get closer to that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something interesting matchup wise to look at, Duke's 4-man Mark Mitchell plays a significant amount of the minutes there at the 4. They have one big who comes off the bench who's more of like a 5, and in that space Flip plays the kind of more power forward role. But either way, when Mark Mitchell is in, his job is to really space the floor. He'll go sit in that corner. He's a 4-man who can shoot some threes and take you off the dribble a little bit, and it creates the space for Kyle Filipowski there. I don't think they've seen anybody who doubles the post like Houston does. Again, it'll be interesting to see how they scheme for it and what they try to do. But I don't think Mark Mitchell, especially the way Houston is kind of having to play small ball, I don't think they're going to be able to do a lot of the things they want to spacing-wise, which, against some of the ACC opponents who have legitimate 7-foot big men, spacing guys out works. They might be playing right into this, with what they want to do. So, it'll be interesting to see as a team who runs through their big man. That's never really scared me historically. When you look at some of the big guys that Houston has played, especially whenever it's a scoring big man, Houston tends to just get it out of his hands. And again, I don't think their guards have the speed and athleticism to go by us. They're all shooters. When you look at like Jeremy Roach, Jared McCain is probably the only one who I'd say has like real explosiveness and ability to create his own shot off the dribble. The rest of these guys want to spot up. They want to space around, flip, and wait for shots. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Well, I haven't taken a look at their schedule and who they played this year, but I would be interested to know, if what kind of teams that they've played against that play our style of ball, that physical, go after every loose ball type of play, that lock you down on defense kind of a team. I don't think we see a whole lot of that in the ACC. So I'd be interested to take a look at some of their previous games just to see who their top defensive, ranked teams that they were playing against and how well they fared against them. And to your point, Gatlin, about, us going against guys that are bigger than us. And even if they have multiple, look at the Oregon game that we had, I think last year, a couple of years ago, where we were going against those 4 or 5-star 7-footer, 7'1" guys who had talent, but I'm not going to say that, they didn't have much effect on us, but we were able to at least contain them with our quickness and our physicality, which we know in college basketball, that's usually what wins it for you, is that physicalness and that quickness. Again, I like our chances against Duke, but got to wait and see how the game plays out, to really see what's going to happen. But good points, Gatlin.
Yeah, and I saw someone talking about the Duke metrics, like Ken Palm loves them. Something that can be said for that, you might want to think about. Houston gets knocked all the time for gaming the system with these metrics and saying, "Oh, they beat up on bad teams." Well, guess what? Duke does the same thing. That's the reason they weren't higher than a 4 seed. Was because they didn't have any signature wins. They don't have a single win against anyone in the top 25 this year. So they won the games they were supposed to win by a significant margin, but their only 2 ranked games. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. They did have 1 ranked
Michigan
win,
State,
and Michigan State may have been ranked at the time.
18th. They were 18th.
Yeah, but Michigan State did not finish the season ranked.
No, they didn't.
Yeah. So Arizona State, they played, they lost. Arkansas, they lost. I think might have been ranked at the time. Baylor was the one game they won. They lost to UNC both times. Everyone that they were supposed to beat, they did. There you go. Quad 1, Duke is 5-4, and that's top 75 on the road and top 25 at home or something like that. You guys can catch me there. But right, so Duke did not have any big time wins, and I think I think the metrics are a little skewed because of that. So something to keep in mind there.
Fair. I think that's fair.
Duke's 33rd, it looks like, ranked defensively in the country. I'm not looking at their stats, but I'd have to go through their schedule to take a look and see what the teams that they played defensively, where they ranked. Virginia's up there defensively, I believe, in the ACC, but outside of that, I'd have to go back and take a look at their schedule to see just how they fared against some of these defensive-minded teams.
Yeah, well, Virginia, as defensive-minded as they are, they were one of the worst offenses in the country.
True.
I think it's tough to compare. It looks like, though, Virginia, as bad as they are, still held Duke to 73. So they only scored 48. But it'll be interesting to see for sure.
Yes,
Blake, where were you? I was about to say, Blake, where were you at for the game?
I was at my parents' house. I was gonna drive back last night, but game went a little long, so drove back this morning. But your fun fact for the day, by the way, Texas A&M attempted more free throws last night than Virginia scored points against Colorado State. So give that information what you will.
I don't know if that makes me feel good or bad.
Yeah, no, that one just confuses too much. You're like, what?
That's good.
Well, obviously, we'll shoot to see. I've reached out to the Duke guys. The main guy was not available for tonight. Potentially might be able to get him or one of the other guys from the site between now and Friday. If we can, we'll probably shoot to do that Thursday night, I would imagine. Yeah, that makes the most sense off the top of my head. If we could do that, we will. If not, we'll obviously see how Friday plays out. Again, Houston plays the next to last game, so part of me is like, I enjoy watching, NCAA tournament March Madness stuff during the day on those, opening round, opening weekend. I respect the fact they put Houston late for the primetime game, and I appreciate that from a Houston standpoint. But watching all these other college games during the day heading up to that, I'm like, man, come on. I'm going to be burnt out by the time Houston gets going. Of course,
Rob, especially you. So I'll tell you what, watching on Sunday, I was nervous when I watched how chalk it all was. All right.
Yeah.
Because the March Madness gods demand an upset. And the
Exactly.
only upset in the round of 32 was Gonzaga, a 5-4 upset. And
yeah, you're like, that's not going to cut it.
It's not an
going
upset.
into the last game of Sunday, I was like, there's no way. I mean, it's primed to happen. So it scares me. Like whenever you watch a chalk day play out, you're like, oh man, this is setting up for a late night upset. I don't like it.
Exactly.
It's just the 5th time ever that every 1 and 2 seed has made it out of the first weekend. 2021 was the last one. I think the time before that was 2004, which is the year I was born. So twice in my life.
Thanks, Blake. Way to go. Blake just had to throw that in and make us feel old tonight. Appreciate it.
My God.
My God.
No,
I graduated college in 2005.
Like to your point though, it's been a really fun first weekend. I think listen, as much as we'd love oh hey, it gives Houston the easiest path ever, all upsets in our region and all that. Like there's something really fun and satisfying about seeing it play out like this, where Houston has a decent road to make a run, but at the same time, these are going to be some really great games that we have to watch. So
yeah, for sure.
Had a resume of a 9 seed, but the heater they've been on recently, that was a 5 seed we played last night.
Yeah, that was a tough matchup, and the fact that the committee did that to us in the second round. Listen, it's not as bad as what they did to UConn, but they definitely didn't do us any favors there.
Exactly.
Yeah. A common opponent is UNC Pembroke. Interesting to see how teams played against them. Duke allowed 68, UH 47. There you go.
Yeah.
Difference in defenses right there,
Potentially, yeah. That is a fair. I mean, it feels like a lifetime ago when UNC Pembroke was in here, but fair. You know what I mean in terms of what the culture and what the stylistic is of each team. So, everyone, of course, will look ahead to Friday night Duke and see how that one plays out. There's a potential after this next weekend that Houston could be sitting in the Final Four, just 2 more wins away from getting back to the Final Four. Man, just what a transition. I hope, and I know a lot of Cougar fans, and I've seen the conversation on the board the last few days, obviously since last night and all day today, just about, and it happens this time every year when fans kind of pause and they're like, man, just think back to 10 years ago, where were we? Think back to how long ago, Phi Slamma Jamma was before we, when we were nationally relevant, this and that. And I see them talk about it all the time, but I feel certain after last night's win and such a hard-fought win, and literally, like I said earlier, just Kelvin Sampson squeezing every last little bit he could out of that team last night for them to will them to a win. I think Cougar fans are not spoiled just yet on the fact they're going back to a Sweet 16 for the 5th year in a row, but I think at this pace they're going to continue to that's going to be the floor of the expectation, so to speak, and so I think you're at that point in the tournament where pretty much any team you can make a case for them making a battle and winning a few games, getting hot, and getting through to winning their national championship here. But I would take it, Houston. I would say even despite the injuries and this and that, they've got as good a shot as any at this point moving forward. And I know Cougar fans are excited, proud, happy, and are looking forward to Friday night's matchup to see where it all plays out. So. I don't know.
And
anybody else have anything?
One final note to end on, Rob, as you talk about looking back at, how long ago Phi Slamma Jamma was and all of that. I mean, one of the, I would say, theme words you could use to describe this season for the Cougs was maybe revenge may not be the right word, but somewhere along that line of, listen, every single loss that we had, we avenged in the following game. Okay. What is the one loss that Houston has never had a chance to avenge?
Don't mess around. Hey,
NC State.
hey. I kept seeing them come through the first 2 rounds this weekend, and I kept thinking, with the odd run they've been on, no less, I kept thinking, in the back of my head, every person that knows Houston and knows the history, in the back of my head, I've constantly been watching them over there and thinking, man, it sure would just be nice not to see that name in the bracket anymore, just for giggles' sake.
I think it would be really special.
Hey.
Just par for the course for this year for Houston to finally have a chance to right the wrong and avenge the sins of Bislama Jama.
You won't be able to keep Jim Nance off the court if that happens that way.
On
if
Easter
the way it plays
Sunday,
out.
no less.
Yeah. I'm just telling you. They're going to write a Disney movie about this at some point.
I'm telling you. So something to keep an eye out for.
All right, everybody. As always, we appreciate you guys joining us, jumping in the conversation. Be sure and check us out on the site, Cougar Digest, on Twitter. Blake Coug coverage. Gatlin's always out there. G Dashman. Kevin, I don't know what he's doing anymore. He's still on the site, but I don't know if he's even on social media anymore.
No.
Yes.
You don't want to follow me on Twitter. It's just me trolling other fan pages.
It's fun for the argument's sake.
And yelling at Fran Frischella. So
for sure. Absolutely. I appreciate everybody for being here and you guys all for being here as well. And then check back. We'll shoot to have. I'm really going to try hard to get the Duke guy on before Friday, which we'll shoot for Thursday night. Hopefully as many people can join back as possible. And we'll do that Thursday heading into the Friday game. So check back on social media and we'll let you guys know when it's all lined up and at what time. So thanks again for being here, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Like and subscribe.
Yep, all the above.
Go
and
Coogs.
I believe we're done. Go ahead and
hit
us out, Mr. Kevin.
All right, that's it for us. Enjoy the talk. Again, we don't do it enough, but I'm looking forward to our Final Four show. I'm going to go ahead and call it. All right. I'm looking forward to that show.
It looks like we are still live, by the way.
Yes, we are.
Yep.
We are still live.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Gatlin's getting scared before you say something crazy. Don't say something crazy while we're still live.
Well, just don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. Don't put that out in the world.
All right, we're ready to get out of here. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll talk to everybody soon.
Appreciate it, guys.
Appreciate it, guys.